welcome to Dolly Scrub Hub again, and this video is the tutorial for how to make the scrubs top. May I suggest that you watch how to make the bottoms first, because I'm just going to repeat how to do seams and how to do the hems is exactly the same as what we've done for the bottoms. So watch that one first, because I'm going to skip that information when we make the top just to make a shorter video for you. Okay, so let's go. Okay, here we are. We have got your back piece and your front piece. Get your right sides together and place your shoulder seams so they're matching up. And we're going to sew along here, we're going to sew the shoulder seams here and here with a straight stitch and a zigzag or overlock. Then I'm going to get my facing back and front pieces, which look like this. I'm going to do the exact same thing and sew them along the shoulder edge, which is this one and this one, so here and here. Now remember, it's a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Done that, excellent. And I've even pressed the shoulder seams to the back. I am on fire today. So get your facing and your top right sides together. And this should, according to our amazing pattern cutter, Kirsty Tyler, should, thanks to her by the way, she's made these patterns just hopefully so easy to make. Right sides together, match up the sides, the shoulder seams, the V and the neck, and we're going to sew around that, the neck edge. 1 centimetre seam allowance again, but you don't need to zigzag or overlock that because it's all going to be tucked away inside. Quick one, once you've sewn the shoulder seams on the facing, you then need to finish all around the outer edge of the facing. If you've got an overlocker, that's going to work really well. If you've got a zigzag, if you're doing it on zigzag, zigzag slightly in from the edge and then you can trim the excess off. But really, if you just want to, it's just because it's poly cotton and it might pucker up. But to be honest, just if you just want to, if you've got lots to do, just sew right on the edge and that's going to stop it from fraying. I have stitched the facing to the top. There we go, with the right sides together. Eventually, this is all going to get tucked inside the top like that. But we've got a little bit of work to do before we get to there, because we have to snip the seam allowance. So on the curve, on the corner where the front meets the back on the shoulder seam, I just want you to snip into the seam right up to the stitching. Don't cut the stitching. If you do, don't worry, just restitch it. I've done one either side of the seam, and then I'm going to do maybe 3 into the seam, the back neck seam. So that's the neck edge there, just so that that will lie flat when we turn the facing the right way round. So another snip there. When you turn the facing onto the inside, if it doesn't lie flat, then you just need to do more snips until it does. The other one is the V here. So we snip right down into the V. Now when I was stitching this, I didn't stitch just a V and then turn and come straight up. I actually did a 1 stitch across the bottom of the V, just to give it a bit of breathing space, if you like, for when I turn that through. You also might want to make your stitch smaller as you come down to this V, so down to maybe like a 2. If you're on 2.5, you could go a stitch length 2 just for that V bit there. So after you've done your snips, then go to the ironing board and you're going to press that into the inside like that. Great, so I want to talk to you about understitching. So I've actually pressed the facing, but before we tuck it right inside, we're going to understitch. And what understitching is when you do a stitch on the facing side, where you stitch the seam and the facing together about 2 millimeters away from the seam. So I'm going to go show you on the sewing machine. What that actually does is it holds the facing and the seam allowance all together. So when you do tuck it to the inside, it just sits more neatly and lies flatter. Right, this is understitching. So get your facing here, there's your seam. I'm going to just turn that to the neck edge. So I've still got my seam also facing the neck edge, and I'm going to stitch really close to the seam, like I think I said 2 millimeters. You can go back to your 2.5 stitch length, and just quite satisfying really. Can you see that? So it's turning out to be that close. Right, so I have pressed it so that the facing is now on the inside, and isn't ironing brilliant? Makes all your wrinkled sewing look really ace. It's about the only time I ever do any ironing. If you ask my family, they'll tell you. Turn it the other way at the ironing board, and while it's all nice and flat, put your pins in to hold the facing in place, because now we're going to top stitch it. So this is where you might need some kind of marker on your machine. I'm going to use, I think, this line here to show me where to top stitch, which is about 3 centimeters. It's about kind of what I'm looking for here. So here goes. I'm going to start kind of near the shoulder, so then my messy bit is there. And again, 2.5 on your stitch length, and we're just going to basically stitch that around there. When you come to a pin, I put my pins in this way so that when I come to them, I can either leave them in, actually I might actually leave them in, or I can just take them out as I go along. Quite good to leave them in though, because the last time I did this, the facing all sort of got caught up, so I learnt my lesson there. Oh yeah, grab your sleeves. I pressed under my 1 centimetre, then my 2 centimetre, like I did on the bottoms, and now I'm just going to hem it. And by the way, I don't think I'm bothering to backstitch that much. The fabric is so thin, I don't know about you, but sometimes it's puckering up when I backstitch. So actually, unless it really matters on your top stitching, don't bother. So here goes, we're going to top stitch and hem both sleeves. So there's my sleeve, and I've hemmed it, top stitched it there. Make sure you put right sides together, so get your top, open it out flat, and then we're going to match the sleeves up. So there should be a little snip in your sleeve head where the to match up with the shoulder seam. So lay that on your shoulder seam. Make sure the shoulder seam is still facing backwards the same way as it is on the facing. More comfortable to wear that way. Put a pin in across there like that. Then match up this edge here and put a pin there. So, and then do the same on the side seam and the underarm corner there. So you should have pin at the shoulder seam, a pin at the other side seam if you like. Now all the rest of this, you know now, that has to fit into that space. So I'm going to match up. This should lie fairly flat where it's actually sort of under the arm, so I'm just going to pin that. Just so you know, the pattern, the sleeve is ever so slightly bigger than the armhole, so that you've got a little bit of ease to fit in and make the sleeve sort of fit a bit better over the top. This will, you just have to basically ease that excess in. So I put quite a lot of pins in when I'm putting the sleeve in. You start out and think it's never going to fit, and then you lay the sort of raw edges together and begin to realise that actually it will actually fit. So I'm going to pin all the way around again, so laying it quite flat actually under the arm, so that any excess that you have on the actual sleeve is in the sort of the shoulder area where you need it to be slightly more full. So I'm putting a few more. Also put your pins in more or less where you're going to stitch it, so in that sort of 1 centimetre seam allowance sort of area, because that's the only place it's actually going to fit. So there's my pins, and now I'm going to sew that with a 1 centimetre seam allowance and then overlock. Great, so here we've got the slits that you will have pressed under 1 centimetre, then another centimetre, so that's already in position. I just want to talk to you though about this section here at the beginning of the split. Make sure you did backstitch at the bottom of that seam there. That's really important, so that the slit doesn't come open. And also what I've done here on the side seam to finish it is I've overlocked it or zigzagged it, as you could do, together rather than so it's closed, not open. But I've finished the zigzag stitch enough that when we come to the top of the slit, it is opened out. I just want to point out that this isn't the best and practice for doing a slit. Normally I would overlock or zigzag these seams separately, but it's faster, and I think in terms of making these scrubs as quick as we can, I think it's the quickest and most effective way to do it. And it doesn't matter that you've got about 1 inch here of raw edge. So let's go back to stitching down the slit. So turn that under, and we're going to just sew. I'm going to back stitch here actually. It should be able to take it because it's quite a few layers there. So again, right on the edge of the fold, and then we're going to get this ready. I kind of line it up like this. When you're about 1 centimetre above where the stitching ends, you're just going to sew across the top of the slit, and then I'm going to come down the other side. There you go. And then obviously, so that's what it looks like on the right side. Going to do the same on the other side now. Ta-da! There we go, it's all done. Last thing you need to do is just sew the pockets on, patch pockets, just like you did on the trousers, with a little rectangle stitch at the top and then round, and then rectangle on the other side, both sides. And that's it, finished. And I forgot to tell you, sorry, size label, when you do your zigzag, you're overlocking on the back neck facing, just pop in the size. Thank you. That's it. Well done, everybody. You're brilliant. So thank you so much.